Once a month, Paula Pant, host of the Afford Anything podcast, answers voicemail questions the listeners send in. Here's one now.
Hi, Paula. My name is Dan. I'm a 20-year-old Dutch national looking to get some more information about investments. I'm currently living in Malaysia and I'm planning to do this for the next 10, 15 years or so, living as a global nomad, so traveling and working in different countries for a few years. I have started to invest about 50% of my salary in a global index fund, both stocks and bonds, worldwide with Vanguard, which is working out quite well so far. I'm quite comfortable with that. But I see a lot of people, especially around Asia, who are investing in real estate. And I'm wondering if that's something that is necessary. And I know you talk a lot about this on the show. I'm starting to get more comfortable with it. But there's a lot of information, a lot of salespeople out there. And you talk a lot about the American real estate and you give a lot of useful tips, but I'm wondering how much of that applies internationally and if you could give some more information about, if you have that, about Asia, about outside of the US real estate, basically. Also, if you have some people that you know that are talking about this on podcasts or on their websites. Lastly, if you have any advice on what I should do or what you would recommend, please let me know. Thank you very much. I love the work you do on your podcasts, and I've been binge listening for the last 4 months. Got to episode 70 now, so I'm looking forward to listening to the rest. Thank you, Paula.
Dan, that's a great question. Do you need to invest in real estate? The answer is no. Absolutely not. It is not necessary. You can build a solid portfolio, you can build wealth, you can have a very successful financial present and future without any real estate investment whatsoever. Sounds like you're doing everything right. You're saving and investing 50% of your income. You're in Vanguard funds, which are low fee, low expense ratio. Absolutely, you can just stick with that. You do not need real estate at all. The reason that I talk about real estate so much is not because it's necessary, but because there are many paths to the same summit. And real estate, specifically buy and hold residential rental properties, is the particular path that I chose, not because it is in any way better or worse than any other option, but because, well, I chose it for two reasons. Number one, I wanted to create an income stream right away. So the assets gain in two forms. There's capital gains or, capital appreciation, and then there are dividends or income streams that come from assets. So those are the two sources of returns. And you see that in both stocks and houses, right? So in stocks, you have the appreciation on a stock, and then you also have the dividend payout that comes from that stock. In housing, you have the appreciation on the house as well as the income stream that comes from that house. However, if you want more of an appreciation-based strategy, stocks are, historically speaking, at least in the US, which is the country and the information for which I know the best. In the US, stocks are where historically the largest appreciation returns have come from in the past 100 years. Housing, historically, in the U.S. has created a stronger income stream in terms of the cash flow and the cap rate. The cap rate is analogous to the dividend on a stock. So the reason that I chose rental properties is because my goal was to create a stream of passive income that could supplement and eventually replace my day job income, my trading time for money income. And so to that end, I chose rental properties. That's one of the two reasons. The other reason that I chose it is because, like I said, there are many paths to the same summit, but in order to stand out, in order to do well, you need an informational advantage. And that informational advantage comes from developing expertise in a particular field. And that is why it is, I think, inadvisable to try to be a jack of all trades and master at none. So you'll notice that I am not somebody who holds rental properties and also flips houses and also buys tax liens and also has warehouses and office spaces and commercial properties and mobile home parks and also is in the options and futures market and really into derivatives and commodities and gold. I don't try to do it all. I simply picked one thing and decided that I was going to focus all of my time and energy and cognitive space into becoming very, very good at that one particular niche thing. As they say, the riches are in the niches. So my niche just ended up being buy and hold residential real estate in the US. And that's what I do. And if I can pat myself on the back, I think I'm pretty good at it. I'm at least good enough at it that it's created a very solid stream of income for me, a very solid passive income stream. And that's why I do it. But I in no way think that it is not necessary. And it is not necessarily even better or worse than any other option out there. So I guess that's a bit of a long answer to the first part of your question, which was, your question was, do I need this? And the answer is no, you don't need it at all. Now, as to the second part of your question, what about other countries? Here's the thing. When we talk about real estate, a lot of the decisions that we make are based around information that we have about, for example, operating expenses as a proportion of the value of the asset. And that is going to vary from country to country based on the cost of materials and labor. What does timber cost in Kuala Lumpur? Do people have asphalt shingle roofs there, or do they use a different type of roofing material? What are the labor costs there? What is permitting like? What are the tax laws in Jakarta? What type of property insurance or umbrella liability insurance do you need if you own a property at the edge of Borneo? What are your assumptions about the utilities payments that you would need to make on a multi-unit dwelling in Chiang Mai? And what is the historic rate of both inflation and appreciation in Perth? You see where I'm going with this. There's no way I would be able to generalize about property investing in Asia because Asia is so large. And really, it's not even right to generalize about it in the United States. The only reason that I can talk about investing in the U.S. with a broad brush is because the tax laws, the historic inflation, the historic appreciation, the general cost of labor and materials, the general assumptions that you use for operating expenses, the justice system's treatment of lawsuits and evictions, all of those are reasonably the same across the U.S. And so for that reason, with regard to economic indicators and taxes and laws, I can make some very broad statements about the U.S. But you know what? I was adopted. I have two biological sisters. One of them spends half the year living in Kathmandu and the other half of the year living in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And the other one lives full-time in Sydney, Australia. The other day, I was talking to my biological sister who lives in Sydney, Australia, and she asked me, are houses in the United States cheap? And I laughed. It was such a funny question because you can't really ask about houses in the United States. Are we talking about San Francisco or are we talking about the Ozarks? Are we talking Midtown Manhattan or downtown Birmingham? So that's what I told her. And then she proceeded to tell me that a lot of the property in Sydney where she lives has exploded in value and the price to rent ratios just do not make sense there. In fact, according to her, and I have not researched the Sydney market myself, but according to her, it's hard to find a property that would even be cash flow positive, or as she calls it, positively geared. A lot of the properties there are negatively geared, and yet investors go into it anyway because of perceived tax benefits, which, by the way, is a very bad idea. Do not do that. Do not go into a negatively geared investment. So what I told her, which is the same thing that I'll tell you, is, well, you know what? If stuff in Sydney is too expensive, then you've got two choices. Either look for rental properties outside of Sydney, because the reason that you would buy a rental property is for the income stream. It is not for appreciation. Appreciation is speculation. So if she can find a good income stream in a different area, then awesome. And if not, go where the money is. I don't know the Australian share market, but if she thinks that she can get better returns in the share market than she could via an income stream, then just go into the share market and don't bother investing in real estate. So that's my answer. As far as resources go, there's one particular book that I absolutely love. It's written by an Australian real estate investor. It's called From Zero to 130 Properties in 3.5 Years. I will link to it in the show notes. Show notes are available at affordanything.com/episode 90. For any Americans who are interested in reading it, remember it's written by an Australian investor, so please disregard the information in there that relates to laws and taxes and inflation and historic rates of return. All of those apply to the Australian market, but all of the other information in there, the broad how to think about an investment, those universal principles, that's great. Thank you so much for asking that question, Dan. Our next question comes from a listener who has asked to remain anonymous.
Hey, did you enjoy this excerpt from the Afford Anything podcast? Then be sure to subscribe to Paula's YouTube channel. Not only is every podcast episode and Ask Paula question released here on YouTube, other creative deep thought videos are created just for you. Remember, you can watch anything, just not everything. Fill your YouTube viewing time with more videos to make you think and grow so you can afford anything. Go ahead, hit that little red subscribe button. We'll take care of the rest.